Get away from the water! It's pulling her down!
The village of Amoji was peaceful and full of life. It was surrounded by tall palm trees, red earth roads, and a wide river that flowed calmly on one side. On the opposite side of the river stood the Orie market square, the busiest place in the village. Every 4 Orie market days, traders from nearby villages gathered there to sell their goods, vegetables, yams, fish, palm oil, fabrics, and beads. But among all the traders, there was one person who stood out. Her name was Oriema. No one knew where she came from. No one had seen her walk into the village from the main road. Yet every 4 Orie market days, before the sun rose and before the first trader arrived, Oriema would already be seated in her usual place at the market. She was always the first to come and the last to leave. Oriema was very beautiful. Her skin was smooth and chocolate in color, shining under the morning sun like polished wood. She had a slender waist and beautiful curves that made other women stare in admiration and jealousy. Around her waist were colorful beads, blue, red, green, white, and gold. She wore beads on her ankles, beads on her wrists, and layers of shining beads around her neck. When she walked, the beads made a soft, gentle sound that drew attention. The young girls in Amoji admired her beauty. Some tried to dress like her. Some tied beads around their waist, hoping to look as graceful as she did, but none of them looked like Oriema. There was something different about her, something mysterious. She sold beautiful handmade beads. They were not like the common beads found in other markets. Oriema's beads shone brighter. They were smooth and cool to the touch. Some said they looked like they were made from river stones. Others said they sparkled like tiny stars when the sun touched them. People rushed to buy from her. Even before she arranged her beads properly, customers would surround her. "Please give me 2 waist beads. I want one for my daughter. Save that blue one for me." Within a short time, her beads would finish. She always sold everything quickly, yet she never left immediately. That was the strange part. After selling all her beads, Oriema would remain seated on her mat. She would sit quietly, watching the people in the market. She would look at the women bargaining loudly. She would watch the children running around. Sometimes her eyes would slowly turn toward the river, and she would stare at it for a long time. If anyone gathered courage to ask her where she came from, something unusual happened. She would simply look at them, just a calm, steady look into their eyes. And suddenly the person would forget what they wanted to ask. They would stand there confused, scratch their head, and walk away. It became a known thing in Amoji. If Oriema looked at you deeply, your mind would go blank. Close to Oriema's stall was a young woman named Adaze. Adaze sold cocoa in the market. She was hard-working and observant. Unlike others who only admired Oriema's beauty, Adaze paid attention to her habits. She noticed that Oriema never ate in the market. She never drank water. She never bought anything from other traders. She simply sold her beads and waited. One evening, after Oriema had sold all her beads as usual, Adaze gathered courage. "My sister Adaze," said gently, "you have finished selling. Why don't you go home?" Oriema smiled softly. "Home will be lonely," she replied in a calm voice. "No one is at home yet." Adaze frowned. "No one?" Oriema only smiled again and said nothing more. That answer stayed in Adaze's mind. Meanwhile, the men in Amoji began to behave strangely whenever Oriema came to the market. Young men found reasons to pass by her stall again and again. Married men, who usually avoided talking too much to other women, stood near her pretending to admire beads. Oriema did not chase them. She did not call them, but her presence alone seemed to pull them closer. Rumors began to spread. Some women whispered that any man who became too close to Oriema would lose his luck. They said businesses failed. Farms dried up. Money disappeared. Some even said that a few men who secretly spent nights with her became weak and useless afterward. At first, these were just stories, but soon people began to notice strange events. A wealthy trader who used to boast about his strength suddenly became poor. A farmer who always had the biggest harvest lost his crops to sudden dryness. Another man fell sick without explanation. Fear began to grow. Still, no one had proof of anything. Adase could not stop thinking about Oriema's strange behavior. She decided she would find out the truth. One Orie market evening, after selling her cocoyam, Adaize pretended to go home like everyone else. But instead of leaving, she hid behind an empty wooden stall near the edge of the market. From there, she could see Oriema clearly. Her heart was beating fast. The market slowly became empty. The sun began to set. The air grew cooler. Traders packed their goods and left. Oriema remained seated. When the market became completely silent, Oriema slowly stood up. She looked around carefully, scanning the area to see if anyone was watching. Adese held her breath. Oriema saw no one. She lifted the empty basket and began walking, not toward the village houses, not toward the road, but toward the river. Adese quietly followed her from a distance, step by step. The closer they got to the river, the louder Adese's heartbeat became. Oriema reached the river bank. The water reflected the last light of the setting sun. She stepped into the water slowly, first her feet, then her legs. The beads around her body began to glow faintly. Adaise's eyes widened in fear. As the water reached Oriema's waist, something unbelievable happened. Her legs began to change. Her skin shimmered and transformed into shining scales. Her two legs joined together, forming a long, powerful tail. The colorful beads blended into the scales like part of her body. Oriema was no longer human. She had become a mermaid. Adaise gasped but quickly covered her mouth. Oriema flipped her long hair back and slid deeper into the water. Within seconds, she disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only ripples behind. Adaise fell to her knees in shock. The next morning, she ran to tell the elders and the women of the village. "She is not human," Adaise cried. "I saw her change into a mermaid in the river." At first, some people doubted her story, but fear spreads faster than truth. With the strange events happening to some men, many believed her. The women were especially angry. "She has charmed our husbands. She has brought bad luck to our homes. We must stop her." By the next Orie market day, the entire village was prepared. The women gathered early. The elders stood at a distance. Even the men waited silently. As always, before sunrise, Oriema arrived. She looked as beautiful as ever, calm, graceful, smiling. She arranged her beads. Customers still rushed to buy from her, though fear was hidden in their eyes. As usual, she sold everything quickly. And as usual, she remained seated after selling. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The women slowly surrounded her. Their faces were hard and angry. "Oriema," one woman shouted. "Who are you?" Oriema stood slowly. She did not look afraid. Another woman screamed, "River spirit, leave our village." They grabbed her arms. They pulled out her beads. They dragged her at river. Oriema did not fight. She did not beg. She only looked at them with deep, unreadable eyes. When they reached the river bank, the women pushed her into the water. She fell in with a splash. For a moment, the water was still. Then suddenly, the river began to move violently. Waves rose high and crashed onto the shore. The villagers screamed and stepped back in fear. The water swirled as if something powerful was moving beneath it. Then everything became calm again. Oriema did not return. From that day forward, she never came back to the Orie market. Life in Amoji slowly returned to normal. The strange misfortunes stopped. Farms grew again. Businesses improved. But something was missing. The market no longer had that mysterious beauty. No more shining beads. No more soft music of beads moving gently. No more graceful figure arriving before sunrise. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon was full, some villagers claimed they heard a faint sound of beads from the river. Others said they saw a shadow beneath the water. But Orina never returned to Amoji again, and the villagers were left with a question they would never fully answer. Was she truly evil, or was she simply a lonely spirit from the river who only wanted to feel human?